Genesis according to Archangel Lucifer. Let me tell you now of another time. The day I died and met God. It was around the turn of the century. The world was in chaos. Sept 11th had not yet happened, but everybody was just on edge, and I had found myself in jail for ... well, just being prone to mischief. During my arrest I had suffered injury to my neck and it got infected quickly. I was in solitary confinement, so no one gave a crap about me, and soon that infection put me into a coma. I fell onto my bed and was assaulted by demons at first. Some past life reoccurrence had brought back my swordsmanship skills, and after a long fight almost 20 of them lay at my feet in a pile and I still stood. Seeing my odds as more came, I decided that they would have no glory and said a spell somehow I'd recalled that gives one's spirit in sacrificial offering in death, and I fell upon my own sword. Suddenly everything around me changed and I stood before Saint Peter. He asked me my God-given name. Now I have to add there is a prelude to this story, but let's just say for the sake of staying on topic, I'd come to realize that I had an unnatural power not like anyone else I'd ever heard of. I could alter the path of moving objects, move within the shadows from one to another, and manifest concentrated balls of electricity enough to make lightning sparks without moving. You remember as a kid under the blanket you would slide your socks on the floor and touch someone and it would shock them? Well, I could arc a spark and shock someone without moving at all. Anyways, I stood before Peter, finally accepting what I had been doubting half of my life, and said, "My name is Lucifer Beelzebub Mephistopheles." Peter didn't look amused and asked, "Is that with one L or two?" Then a light shined through the gates behind him and they opened, and a voice soft yet stern asked, "If I gave you power you must promise me one thing. Do not betray me." I focused a ball of energy into my palm and said, "I already have my own power. Why would I want yours or betray you?" I was taken up beyond the gates, beyond the earth. Up I went past the stars, galaxies, the universe stretched from beginning to end, and then I saw that all we could possibly attempt to conceive was but only a section of his ankle compared to the entire being that was God. Cone, he said, "Walk with me," and we walked as if on a beach, but it was the universe from beginning to end we were walking down. "You are my most powerful angel I have ever designed, for within you lay the divine spark of creation. Now it is time for you to bear your destiny, morning star, bearer of the first dawn. Let us begin." And with that the beach fell away and we went to the beginning of time and space and crashed through beyond even that like a rock skipping across the water. This is the voidless space beyond existence. Nothing has yet been made. Within me I felt a fire, but it was warm and did not burn. Together as one I gathered my ball of energy in my hand and his fire enveloped it, and we stretched out our hand and said, "Let there be light." And I snapped my fingers as the fire and electricity collided together, and boom! A giant multicolored hue of fire stood before us. Now what? God looked at me. His form was without detail, just light in the shape of a body-like figure. Now I show you why they call me the Devourer of Souls. I however did have a shape that looked like Goku, though I'm not sure why. I never really liked that show. I inhaled and sucked all the energy from the giant star and it sat there for a few. It was just a dark charred mass with orange-red lines forming and stretching further across its surface. Then a white flash and loud crack, and I was flying head over heels backwards for a while until I finally stopped spinning. I looked and giant hunks of rock and strewn colors of green and red and blue went streaking past us. Those giant asteroids will one day become galaxies and planets and stars. It is done. Well, there is no moral to my story. I just wished to share my experience with someone who has faith in the same one I met that day. You see, he does not appear here among us only through us because he cannot do so otherwise. If he did, then that moment of that story would become compromised and endanger all of creation to the scrutiny of man's questions and the greed for power by others. Besides, he did not create existence to be exalted. He did it mainly to create something more than beautiful. He did it to create something magnificent. And after a time God created the earth, and as it cooled and the air became calm and the oceans brought forth the land, the Lord and I went down to the earth, and he said, now we shall begin to create the life upon this world, for the world of man is great and my greatest endeavor, for they shall one day grow and become great men of wisdom, and from them I one day will come from among them. From their ways and beliefs and wisdom shall shape the very core of wisdom from which I shall come. That is why they are my most important creation. Now let us take hold upon the earth. It shall be done from this tree, the tree of knowledge, for the tree is imbued with my essence and like an anchor from which I shall stand and create the world. And so he did, creating Adam and Eve, the trees and life within the oceans and sky. And then he took a day of rest and departed from then garden, and knowing what was to happen he told Lucifer to make sure they did not eat of the tree of knowledge, for if they did, they would consume a part of God's essence, and mankind's frail mind could not contain the knowledge of the divine and would destroy them. Then the dark spirit, who is called Satan, took possession of Lucifer and led Eve to the tree and did tempt her to eat of the fruit, and she in turn tempted Adam, who ate of it as well. Instantly they became sick and said it was if they had eaten of the most sour thing ever. The Lord returned and saw what had happened, and then saw the dark spirit moving from Lucifer to Eve. He took hold of the spirit and said, so you wish to crawl around on your belly like a serpent, then a serpent you shall be, and cast Satan into the form of a snake. Satan tried to take the form of a woman and began cursing the name of God and swore revenge on God by the suffering of mankind, and God then turned her into a mountain goat, and then Satan tried to leap from a cliffside to free himself of the goat's form, and the Lord said, and I take from you your legs, and you must crawl upon your belly, and you shall not die and deceive any more by taking the shape of another, but instead you shall shed your skin and remain a serpent until I see fit to strike you down, and I shall take from you your fangs, so that you shall not bring harm to another ever again. And the serpent slithered off defeated. And then he cast Adam and Eve out of the garden and did close it up, and placed Michael at the entrance with a flaming sword to guard against any who would try to enter. Then the Garden of Eden turned to bushes of thorns and thistles, and God cursed man to toil the earth for his food, and woman to bear labor in great pain, and they were to know death, for they had eaten of the fruit. And time passed, and Cain did kill Abel of jealousy for God's favor upon him, and generations begat generations until the days of Noah. In this time the Lord had sent Lucifer and his angels to earth to watch over and bring wisdom to mankind. They were not to take part in the splendors of man, only on that which was made by the Lord were they to take part in and further their understanding of God's relationship with man. They were with man for a time when one of the angels, Azazel, said, let us take up children with the women, and through them we can carry on a legacy and teach them that which we have learned. One of the other angels, Earl, spoke and said, I don't think we should. Children are something for man to bear, not angels. Then Samael said, besides, we have not the means in which to create children. Lucifer then said, that is not entirely true, for within our wings lies the divine light, and if we join our light into the womb of a woman, then the spark of life will take form. Then Malach spoke and said, but we are not to take part in the splendors of man, only that which was made by the Lord. And Azazel said, if we take them as wives, then we shall be in the aspects of love, which was made by the Lord, and children are also designed him, and not a creation of man's design. Earl then said, I think we should ask God first. But the decision had been made, and they thought only of how glad God would be to see how wise his angels had become in their time here on earth. And thus the Nephilim were born, and their skills made them heroes and legends among men, and when mankind no longer could sustain them, they turned on man and made war against him. Then they turned and made war against themselves, and did scar the lands with their battle. Until the Lord did call Lucifer to heaven, but something was not right. Lucifer could not tell what it was, but there was something that was not as it should. The Lord told Lucifer that his children were abominations and that they must be destroyed, for they threatened all of creation, and he told Lucifer that he and the other fallen must hunt down and destroy their children themselves. Lucifer stood appalled at what he had heard, felt sorrow and the feeling of unease in his heart. This was not God. Lucifer said, if this is what heaven has become, that we should kill our own children, then I shall no longer be any part of it. Lucifer threw down his sword and insignia of heaven. I renounce my loyalty to heaven. Then a sharp, piercing sensation came from behind. It was Michael and his flaming sword. It scorched the wings from Lucifer and scarred his face. Then I cast you out as that of an unclean thing. Your place is no longer found in heaven. And Lucifer fell from the heavens to earth, and mankind saw and found him. When they heard his story, they vowed to help hide the children of the angels within the forests and mansions. And the dragon, Tiamat, the deceiver of nations, who is Satan, was angered by this and did chase after mankind, who hid the children in the mansions. And thus he vowed to destroy mankind, for they had defied his rule, and the dragon did open its mouth and let forth the flood waters to destroy all of mankind, for the dragon knew that from these children one would come and defeat him and bring about the end of his reign. But mankind hid the children in the mountains where the waters could not reach. Then there was a great war in heaven, and the dragon and his angels fought against Michael and his angels, and the dragon was defeated and cast into the bottomless pit and enchained for 1,000 years there. And after the flood of Noah and the rebellion in heaven brought about by the deception of Satan, deceiver of nations, that old dragon who is also called Tiamat, was cast down from heaven by Michael and enchained for 1,000 years into the bottomless pit. The fallen angels who the Lord knew were innocent in their hearts of the sins they had been accused, and that the dragon had used them, so thus he did not destroy them but instead cast them down to earth. Those fallen angels, 7 were they in number, were Lucifer, Uriel, Azazel, Asmodeus, Bartholomew, Samael and Malach. These 7 angels were cast out of heaven to earth and given dominion over the earth in order to maintain the balance of the earth by the keys of dominion given to them. Uriel was given the keys of life and commanded to wander between the mortal realm and the place prepared for man until their judgment, to usher the dead to their place until that appointed time. Lucifer was given the keys of death and hell and was sent to oversee the realm of perdition made for punishment of those who had sinned in the eyes of the Lord, until the day the Son will come to retrieve the keys of life and death, as is foretold in the prophecy of the Messiah, who will come and sacrifice himself for the sins of man, and he shall separate the evil from the just like wheat from chaff, and lead the righteous from perdition to the kingdom of his Father. That is the appointed time when Lucifer and Uriel will relinquish their keys of life and death, but the keys of hell shall remain with Lucifer to continue his dominion over hell. Samael was given the key of the dominion over the spirit, and he was to comfort the souls of the dead and prepare them while they awaited judgment in the place prepared for them. Azazel was given the keys over the dominion of purgatory and was to show the way to those who had become lost in life and no longer can find hope. He shall be like a shepherd to lost souls. Bartholomew was given the keys of dominion of justice, and it was his duty to administer judgment over those who have died unjustly and of those who died as martyrs, and deliver wrath upon those who strike their brother and their fellow man. Asmodeus was given the keys of dominion over sin and was allowed to see the weaknesses in a man's heart, and was to show him the errors of his ways and the details of sin, so that he may find the wisdom in them and thus know the value of a righteous life. And he was to work with Malach, who was given the keys of dominion over virtue and righteousness, and he was to show mankind the ways of righteousness, and was given the ability to see into the hearts of man as well, to see their purity and strengths and show them the value of living a righteous life. These 2 keys of sin and virtue shall build upon man's wisdom, and through them they shall become enlightened from generation to generation, for this is the gift of free will that God bestowed man, to know right from wrong, evil from good, and make their decision based upon the wisdom learned from therein. And the Lord gave the knowledge of the keys to Lucifer, and placed him as the keeper of the keys to distribute to the other angels before taking dominion over perdition, and told him that though they are given this duty, they cannot take physical form or appear before man on the mortal world. And this was to be their dominion until the end of days, when all of man shall be called forth for the final judgment. And so the light of God ascended back into heaven, and the fallen angels took dominion over the earth, and man would come to call them gods over them. As the ages of man marched on, they went from gods to legends to myth. And their children, the Nephilim, that were not destroyed so easily as Satan had wished in his deception of man and God by bringing about the flood, their children went on, after much war and suffering, to become the gods of man through the ages, and like their fathers, watched over the balance of the earth and had dominion over the physical elements and kept man safe from the forces of the deceiver. They became legends of gods and men of valor and greatness, whose tales were known even until the end of days. And Gabriel spoke as he brought message of the prophecy of the end of days. At that appointed time the place prepared for man shall give up those within, and perdition shall give up their dead, as will the earth, and purgatory shall give up theirs, and all shall stand before the Lord for judgment. So too shall the fallen be called forth and judged for their deeds, and only then shall it be known if their place be found again in the heavenly places, or if they shall be cast into the lake of fire with Satan, from which there is no return. And that appointed day of judgment is not known to any in heaven nor upon the earth when it shall be. For only God knows when that day shall come.